complicated, you know, man. I got down Rubik's Cube, man. You like talking about blue, red, man, then you get to one side, and like, messed up.
All right, Gio. Welcome back to the Jay Burden Show. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm just trying to get myself in the mindset. To quote, I'm thinking of that really stupid Trailer Park Boys episode where J Rock gets caught, committing a certain act. He goes, I'm trying to get myself, into a sexual situation, sexual mindset. So I've been listening to White Pony by Deftones on repeat ever
Well,
since
see, I've just been
the
listening
years.
to Pony by Genuine.
Oh
Which is-
wow, synchronicity. There you go. No, but White Pony is literally the sexiest metal album. So it's apparently all the TikTok e-girls are into Deftones now. So maybe I have a chance. I don't know. An e-girl that likes Deftones. Can I make it any more obvious? So yeah, it's episode 69. And so it just so happens that the Twitter discourse has shifted to our favor. And so now, and to talk about such a juvenile concept as the 69. So, sorry, I'm just getting distracted. I'm doing the shill tweet right now. So,
oh yeah, no worries, man. I'm doing something similar. So specifically, what I wanted to talk to you about, and I should say thank you so much for coming, because we had kind of a scheduling kerfuffle. Partially, it's my fault, as happens from time to time. I was just telling Gio, this is my third recording of today, so my mind's kind of all over the place. But I wanted to talk with you about something specific, which is that I think that we've witnessed kind of a new stage in the rollout of kind of like consumer level AI, right? And the deepfake AIs have existed for a while, but they've kind of hit the zeitgeist just recently. And I became aware of it because some of the people in my Telegram group made a deepfake bot of me, and it was kind of fun.
yeah,
Don't get me wrong.
I saw mine too. It's but I think there was one where someone like did a group one where like it's David Attenborough describing the sector, if you will. So
Right,
yeah.
exactly. And don't get me wrong, like a lot of that's fun games. Like I'm not even slightly offended by any of it. I thought it was, all fun games. But it did kind of make me, I guess, like stop and think a little bit. And what has come kind of at the similar time is a conversation about like essentially like deep fake porn AI. Because I think like a lot of people, I saw this, this image going around of this e-girl. I had no idea who she was, crying. And basically that it was saying like, oh, look, this is her after seeing, deep fake porn with her face on it. And look, like I have in general very little sympathy for e-girls, but like that is something that kind of like pulled at my heartstrings a little bit. Like that just seems like a truly like one awful situation, but two, like this idea that much like Midjourney has enabled us to essentially make whatever image we ever wanted, in a weird way, we've now got the same thing with, like adult content. And to me, that just seemed like an absolute apocalypse.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think what it was, I think he deleted it, but of course, people screen cap everything. The guy that was making fun of this e-girl, for crying about like attention or whatever, basically like it's your fault because if you put yourself out there, and of course, like normie like Stan Twitter, descended upon it, but I think it is genuinely bad. I mean, it's like the deep fake, like the photo, like ever since Photoshop was around, there's been deep fake prawn. I mean, you could find anything back in the day. You could find, Willow from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, deep faked, with photo editing. But by the way, shout out to Matthew the Stout. I promised him in the group chat that I would mention Willow from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So, no, but as an example. But yeah, you could find AOC deep fakes with Photoshop. No, but I think like now, because the similitude to a real living person has become so perfected. Not perfected, but at least can be enhanced compared to like an obvious deep fake or like an actress. Like I mean, even the spoof of public figures in pornography. I mean, the infamous what's her name? Was it Corey? Lisa Ann that did the Nail and Palin one, like that's different, obviously, but I feel like this is a unique violation, and I feel like the guy rightfully was dogpiled because it is horrible. Like if you're taking a public figure and you're deep faking them because you have this porn brain, but then of course there's always debate whether like not like they deserve it or anything, but if you are like a Twitch streamer and you are like at least hinting like the way that, for example, like Pokimane hints at her sexuality, and you're trying to like play off like basically appealing to like a nerd fantasy, even though like let's face it, she's a mid. Come on, Asian like half a mid girl, like let's go. So I feel like, but that being said, like of course ethically it's terrible, it's wrong. I don't agree with it. I think like it is a violation to see yourself at least partially realistically being in a porno video without your consent. I mean, it's almost similar in some weird way to like revenge prawn, but of course, like revenge prawn is like a more deeper violation because you're trusting someone. First of all, you're a woman. I wouldn't even like exactly trust anyone with your nudes or
Well,
skin
Gio,
flick or
it's
whatever.
very kind of you to assume that women listen to this stream. So I think you're
Yeah,
probably
okay,
good.
yeah, true. That's true. No, but in general, like if you have a GF, I mean, like I don't know, like it's weird, I guess, like if you're married or whatever, that's different. But still, it's like first of all, if you're married, why do you need? I guess it's nice to have a nudie of your wife, I guess. But I mean, if you have the real thing at home, why do you need the advertisement? It's just I don't know. That's kind of weird. But that's not weird. I mean, plenty of guys have nudies of their wives, but I'm saying like, never mind. Not that I would know this ever, but okay, we have one woman, but no. The point being is, if you're a woman, if you do happen to listen to this, I mean, I highly recommend probably not sharing your nudes or consenting to a sex video with your BF, because that just like probably isn't good in terms of like, well, what happens when you break up, and guys, you naturally, I mean, it's you know what I mean? Like, I mean, guys tend to
Right.
share. So, among the bros, you're cutting up. Like, listen,
So,
it's not good to share nudes of your wife or girlfriend, but I'm just saying it happens. Like, you always,
so one thing is that you sent me, in DMs, a tweet
yeah.
thread that was actually pretty decent from let's just say an unlikely source. So do you want to introduce that?
my good friend Justin Murphy. Uh, yeah. He usually says these things for bait. Obviously, he's the master of the bait tweet. So, he probably that's why he probably did these tweets. But he does have a point here. So if you want to pull him up on the screen, we'll see. We'll go over it. So no, but
Oh,
anyways, before we
yes.
do that, what do you think of the e-girl thing? Like the one that was watching her own nudes? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I didn't look that much into it, really. Like, I wasn't like I really didn't know who she was. I just kind of saw it, and
No, I
I
just saw
think,
the dog pile. We never know who they are. They're just random Twitch
yeah,
girls.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, like, on one hand, I mean, what they're doing is kind of messed up. They're taking advantage of male parasocial behavior, and that's wrong, right?
Yeah.
But there is a point at which it's like that's legitimate. Like, I could understand how that would be legitimately very disturbing, and like I think it's pretty easy to grow calloused, especially to like
What if it
Twitch
was your
streamers.
fiance? Like think of it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
like I don't know, man. That maybe I'm just maybe I'm just too soft. Maybe I'm just too like soft hearted. But to me, that just like that seems like a very fundamental violation. That you're
yeah,
taking someone's likeness and not just using it in like a photo collage or like a Photoshop, but like a live action, simulated video with them and their voice. Like that seems like a very fundamental, violation of, and this is going to sound super chin stroking pretentious, but of like your personhood in a way. It's also just gross. And I realize that's not the best argument. I think it's gross, but I think that's the one I'm landing on.
yeah. I mean, I know that people have come up with takes like, is this more uniquely violating than doing like prawn in itself? Which I think it is, because if it's against your consent, then that's obviously like, you know what I mean? Like it's not. Oh, we do have my my good friend Lady Marigold in the chat. So we have two women, two confirmed Foids in the chat. Get out of here, Foid. No, I'm kidding. Stay, please. We're kidding. Listen, all misogyny is ironic. I'm a women prospector. Women prospector. Kind of like fishmonger, but not really. You know what that was a metaphor for in Shakespeare, right? Fishmonger. So not to get it. Speaking of OnlyFans, of fishmonger. No, but anyways, no, yeah. So it is unique violation because it is against your. It is not something that you're exactly like consenting to. I mean, even when it comes to like the topic of pornography, like okay, yes, women do it and they think it's empowering, but then, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like this is always a sticky issue because when you sort of can see the whole like each side of it, it
Okay,
becomes
I'm
very
sorry, man. You've got to stop walking into these innuendos. I'm trying to be mature, but some of those are low-hanging
fishmonger.
fruit. No. Never mind. Carry on, man.
No, but I mean, like, okay, so a woman does porn, right? So yes, she's consenting and she thinks it's empowering and it's a job, blah, blah, blah. Like, whatever. Sex work is real work. But then you do have like a chain of exploitation behind that. But then also you have the counter argument that it's like, well, does that mean that women have no agency? And so it's sort of like when the sort of like sex posy 2010s feminists, when they say like, okay, does that mean that women have no agency? Then the trads go, yeah, women don't have agency, obviously. So it's, no, I'm kidding. Listen, I joke, but it's kind of sticky. It's kind of a slippery issue when it comes to the agency of the average porn star. So listen, I'm just rambling right now. But
No.
but I do think that the issue is that do you outweigh that chain of exploitation and the sort of the male gaze and the like the ability to commodify one's own very like gross pantomime of sexuality, or is that outweighed by saying that women have like zero agency, zero responsibility? Like I think like the thing with the trads is that when it comes to the argument about like the woman question, right? You can say in a society that men have more responsibility over women when you do have a social arrangement that predicates more not just political but even like interpersonal and family power towards men. But when you have a system where women lack um social and political responsibility but then reap the benefits of that social and political responsibility, then you have a fundamentally skewed system. So again, like I know this is like very old manosphere 2010s talking points, but it largely is true. I mean, you can't say that women are perfectly exploited by capitalism or pornographers or whatever, and then go around and say, well, also women have superior agency, and it's actually the agency of men that are exploited them. So it's a very complicated issue, right? I mean, ideally, we could say that women, they do need the protectorship of men, but in a system that facilitates proper relations between men and women. I think that's like the clear non-autistic, non like pent up aggressive, bitter answer that someone who is more inclined to like right wing or manosphere thought should be giving. It shouldn't be like this immediate like like typical incel like discourse. It's always like some bitter feminist and some bitter incel arguing with each other in the TL. Like you have that going God girl saying like, oh, what's funny? It's like what I talked about last week about like how trad women like basically reverse engineer feminist arguments against men, but they like put a wheat field and a blouse and a flower blouse on it. So it's like, but like all this stuff is just ephemeral, right? But I'm just saying that it's very complicated in our day and age to outweigh these issues of the responsibility that women share personally, and also the fact that we do live in an unending chain of exploitation and other social maladies that have essentially hammered away at a certain form of femininity above all other forms of femininity. So, yeah, of course, Charlemagne blocked her. Of course, you blocked her. Of course. No.
So let me
yeah.
tell you where I come from on this, right?
Okay, you go ahead. Yeah.
So at a very basic level, right? Other than just a sheer, moral precept, well, why is pornography wrong? Well, because it essentially it gives you the reward without the work, right?
Right. Yeah.
You get the brain chemicals, you get the dopamine without doing the things that are normally associated with that, right? You're kind of like hacking your brain, and it's incredibly addictive. It's it saps your 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 will. And to me, right, the reason it does that is because it's kind of violating the contract of sexuality.
Right.
And the first version of that, kind of like the most basic one, which I think is, and don't get me wrong, this is a human behavior. You can never get rid of it, right? It is a prostitute. And again, you're hacking that circuit. You are, you're going somewhere, you're doing something, you're sacrificing your money directly, and you're bearing the cost of social shame.
Right.
Right? People still did it. It is the oldest profession, but
Mhm.
there were consequences, and there was something to be associated with that. Now, kind of like first gen porn, when porn got really big, with VHS tapes, there
Yeah.
was much
Yeah. The
less.
DVDs.
Right, there was much less social content, but it was still there, right? You had to go to a CD video store, you had to go behind the bead curtain,
It's
and
like literally like 12, like 8mm. That one scene where they go to the grimy underground porn store, and Joaquin Phoenix's character Max California is like, all this is going to disappear. It's going to go on the internet one day, and
well, right.
yeah.
And again, there was much less. There was much less risk. You weren't really going to get an STD. You weren't going to end up with a bastard kid. But nonetheless, right, there was still some, risk and effort required.
Wait,
to
you
do
weren't
it.
going to get an STD from a prostitute?
No, from a VHS porno store.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I was like,
So
what?
I'm saying you're going down a
Yeah.
decrease. Yeah, you 100% would. Some like nasty, medieval bathhouse woman. But nonetheless, right?
They had syphilis back then, right?
Oh,
Like,
of
I
course.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching this documentary about why a monastery had a high percent of syphilitic deaths, like skeletons. It's because basically rich people would pay the monastery to bury their to take care of their dying relatives who have syphilis.
Oh.
And so they would also pay a premium to be buried closer in proximity to the head bishop that died in that monastery. So,
Oh,
I
that's
mean, us
interesting.
Catholics, we have all sorts of crazy rituals like that. So it's, yeah.
And so to continue my point, right? Like the internet increased that one, availability, and two, decreased the relative cost associated with it. But
Right.
again, the problem is that you're limited by human actors at a certain point. Like literally, there's only and obviously that people have managed to get, siloed into very diverse things, but it is just limited, one, by human physiognomy, and two, just, maybe there's a chance that your exact, fetish doesn't exist yet, or there isn't enough of it.
Yeah.
But to me, right, this is the ultimate in that trend, right? You essentially have as much as you want of whatever you want, wherever you want it, for no cost. And that's terrifying to me. And I don't mean that in the
Right.
sense that, like, there's kind of this like weak version of it that's like, oh, it'll make men worse husbands, which, while that's true, my primary concern is, oh dear God, we're going to raise an entire generation of goons, of essentially
Oh,
just coomers. And we
yeah.
already had
True.
that problem, and now we can literally give people whatever they want in an instant. And to me, that I think that's truly terrifying.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, like when it comes to the arguments for sex work, quote unquote, it's almost like the problem is like there's always sort of like this solutions, quote unquote, that are like bandied about by the managerial state when it comes to like, well, what are we going to do with these incels? Why don't we give them like a GF simulator? Why don't we pay there was this debate like back in the day where it's like, why can't we just pay prostitutes to go with incels? Even though it's not really, we all know this, it's not really about sex, right? The physical act. But then it's like, it's funny because these like Jezebel, Exo Jane, like Lindy West type of feminists, they were like, well, no, actually, like the sex workers, they shouldn't bear the brunt of these, terrible, evil incels and their terrible woman hating desires. Because of course, every incel is just ready to Fed post in real life, right? Of course, they're terrible. They're literally the Taliban, and so it's like even still, like even something that is proposed to the quote unquote solution of the fact that there are people left behind in the post sexual revolution society. That's not good enough. Like that's denied to them, right? Because not to say like I agree with that. I don't think like anybody should be seeing, it's kind of like it's adding to a chain of human suffering that's probably not good. So I do not advocate for, of course, I do not advocate going and seeing a quote unquote sex worker. That's not, you know what I mean? But I'm just saying, like, it's very funny when we talk about these issues, when we talk about like how, and this is the real heart of all these issues, the way we talk about like human desire being a quote unquote human right, the way we talk about like sex and sexuality as a quote unquote human right, the way that air and water and healthcare and shelter are human rights. Uh, that is the only human right that can't be enforced by the government or by a social body the way that these other ones are, because it's not simply a commodity, because you're dealing with another human being that has the, ideally the same amount of, dignity and imago Dei as you do. So these issues, I don't think they're ever going to like really have a solution to them, because I remember back in the day, it's funny, I was talking to, Grayson Quay, the journalist, right? So he was
No,
talking about,
I don't.
well, Prude interviewed him recently. He works for a number of like, more mainstream places. We were talking about Ross Douthat, and I just remembered because he was telling me how he met Ross Douthat. And I remember when Ross Douthat wrote that incel article about like the problem with just saying that like sex workers, like what happens, like why can't we have like state mandated GFs? He actually wrote this article, bravely enough, and of course he concluded that it's like untenable and it's not realistic. But of course, as you know, the New York Times cat ladies just like crucified him. They literally crucify him every article that Ross Douthat releases, right? But because when you really think about that, how can you like, okay, so the leftists, they don't have a very coherent argument in one sense, because they say that how can you put a price on human intimacy and connection, which they're correct, right? But then you also have the warriors of the sexual revolution saying that, well, don't you know that all relationships are pretty much just commodified? So, like, sex work must be real work, because in a marriage, a wife has to tolerate a lot because her husband's a breadwinner, blah, 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 blah. So you have, like, basically, they're trying to, like, have both sides of the argument at once. They're saying that at one end, when it comes to, like, the state-mandated GFs or whatever, that's not right. That's evil, because you can't commodify, you can't enforce human connection and intimacy. But then they're also saying that, well, actually, all relationships are based in commodification anyways. So it's like, well, that's why sex work is real work. So it's like, take your argument. Of course, we all know the real issue. It's that basically anytime a man complains about their sort of lack of their sort of lack of intimacy and female connection in life, of course it's their fault, they're evil, they don't deserve anything, right? But not that I agree with the statement of GF. I'm just saying, like, the Ross Douthat argument was proposing the idea as an intellectual quandary, but that wasn't good enough, obviously, for New York Times readership. By the way, there's this one guy that replies. He's Chelsea Handler's older brother. This guy, if you look at the New York Times, his name is Socrates. I hate this guy with a passion. He's like the worst, most snobbish boomer lib. If you ever read an article on the New York Times and you go to the comments section, this guy will be in there. So I want to give a personal FU to Socrates at the New York Times. Apparently, he's Chelsea Handler's older brother. They did a whole profile on him because that's how prolific he literally spends all day just commenting on the New York lies. And I want to say, I'm gonna cut myself off because I'm gonna start Fed posting when I start thinking about Socrates at the New York Times. The commenters. So, have you ever read into Socrates, Jay Burton?
No.
New York Times reader?
No, of course I'm not. I'm I'm a Zoomer, which means I don't have the attention span for the written word.
True.
And two, the New York Times has been complete and total ass my entire life, and so there's really just been no motivation for me to to go into it. So there's one other thing which we've talked about, kind of like the male side of this, right? The option to have as much as you want of whatever you want.
Let's talk about the female side of it.
Right, which is, do you think that this will essentially erase the cam girl, erase like the porn star, legitimately, in the sense of like those being real people?
No, I mean, it won't. No, it won't. No, sorry, go ahead. I was just laughing at Bartholomew Red because he made a reference to our good friend Dan Baltic's book, Nutcracker. So the theory of the equal distribution of lives. Sorry, go ahead, Jay. I cut you off. I was just laughing at that. Have you read Nutcracker, Jay?
No, I haven't. I need to. I've been trying to buy more books from our friends, and I
highly
took the
recommend
month of
Nutcracker.
January off from reading because I kind of overdosed last
Man.
year. Like I read, which isn't a crazy amount, but I read essentially almost 10,000 pages last year.
Whoa!
And I read Bolaño, and that just broke my brain. I was like, I am sick of this, and I needed to take some time off. But I need to get back into it, and that's on my short list.
Yeah, no, but I highly recommend Nutcracker. It's a short read. It's funny because the artist that does all of the Terror House books, what's his name? I forget his name, but he does all of them, most of them. He actually made the leftist woman with the the liberation hat look more appealing than I imagined her in like reading the book, like as a sort of like haggardly fat slob with terrible skin. Like not a good fat. Like, I mean, I'm not talking about a good chubby girl. I'm talking about a Renault Fault girl. Okay, that's like very shapely, very nice. Like, I'm into that, right? Renault Fault. Follow Renault Fault on Twitter. Renault Fault, my good friend. Actually, no, don't follow him, please. Listen, it's not a very Christian account if you're adverse to nudity and chubby women. But I'm writing a whole article on Renault actually recently. Follow him, follow Addy Muncher. There's another guy of the similar vein. Follow Renew Fault fan account number 2. Sorry, Jay, I'm just totally smutting. Like, listen, I'm just telling on myself. Don't follow any of those accounts. They're smut. They post pornography.
Look, all I'm saying is, whatever you do not go to @GiantArtProductions likes on Twitter. Worst mistake of my life. Anyway.
You know what's funny? I try not to like Renault Fault's post because I know that I'll always get Woodside Woes. Thank you, subject to change. Follow Woodside Woes. Follow Addy Muncher. Follow Renault Fault. I try not to like their posts because I know that there's going to be my fans. They're getting my followers like, Gio, why did you like this? Why did you direct me to this porn? Like, it's a chubby fat woman with never mind.
The real answer is because anytime you do, the entire Telegram group is going to roll up and just bonk dozens of times. You'll just be shamed.
I'm not looking
Record Deepness says Gio goes live for 10 minutes without telling on himself challenge.
And then Charlemagne. Yeah, and then Charlemagne's I'm gonna check right now. Oh, God.
Jeez, I like how I really was trying to have, a big brain, moral topic, and of course we come in and immediately just start Gio the chubby chaser.
Yeah, no, it's true. No, it's funny because Renault, he's starting to get submissions from e-girls. And some of them are quite nice. I mean, some of them, I really got to applaud these brave e-girls for, like, you're posting your full nudes on the internet. Come on, it's with a guy that an account that primarily attracts incels. I mean, come on, you're getting put on the 4chan board. This is the only
time I will ever tell you this. I am cutting you off. We're done.
Yeah, subject changes right. The Rubenesque. But anyways, you asked the question: will they? What do you think? Do you think it's going to destroy the porn industry, or I don't know? Maybe.
I don't think it'll destroy the industry. I think that the kind of like that Vice and like the monetization of Vice is incredibly difficult to destroy, and 2, I think that it's such a juggernaut. There's so much money in it, that someone will find a way.
Billions of dollars.
I do think that there will be something to the fact that like when you can create whatever you want, when you can have exactly what you want all the time, I do struggle to see how a physical biological human can compete with that.
Yeah, true.
And so I do wonder if, obviously, there will always be
women are over. Xenofeminism was correct, but for the wrong reasons. Women are over. No, I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, and so I guess in a weird way, maybe that's a good thing. Like if there's less clout to be gained.
No, that's terrible. No, it's not a good thing.
No, I know it's not. But here's my one argument, right? When because people react to incentives, right? Like I'm an econ guy, that's where I come from. And in general, when there is something to be gained, whether it's money, or clout or attention, people will move based on that. And I think that now there's just so much attention, so much money to be gained from being a thought, essentially, from,
Yes,
from, even if not, directly, like posting nudes or anything, but just like being out there. And I think that maybe there's a chance, and again, maybe this is me being overly optimistic, that essentially when there is an unlimited supply of whoever you want doing whatever you want, the demand for kind of the real thing will drop off. I don't know, or at least there will be less status associated with it.
What is that law called? That law of the sociological law, or it's not just sociology, but it's also in behavioral science, where essentially if you have the pantomime of something, that essentially stands in for the real thing, and that becomes good enough.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
I know Baudrillard talks about it a lot, or because essentially it comes from Lacan, right? It comes from Lacan. The real object is not the real object of desire. To quote Caesar, le petit object. Sniffing Zizek, right? Wonder what he's sniffing. Oh, I'm sorry, Herver. Renault unfollowed you. Oh, that's I'll put in a good word for you. I'll put in a good, because you are too wholesome. You are too, but I'll put in a good word for you. I mean, I know Renault follows only the best e-girls, but anyways, God, I gotta stop. Listen, when I come out with my erotica article on Renew Fault and how he's changing beauty standards on the right wing, I will talk about him less. But anyways, you said about, I think it was who was in the chat. Was it Bartholomew or was it Subject to Change that said that essentially it's not going to affect porn stars, but it will affect like the e-girl, the goth girl, the online woman, the online personality. It basically will affect anyone who isn't posting nudes online. And that really asks a question of, so when it comes to like the proliferation of fantasy and desire, when those things become sort of deviant, and they become malfeasant to actually achieving desire in terms of its fulfillment, because it's never fulfilled. When it comes to just settling for the pantomime of something, when it comes to the simulation of something, like granted a very high key kind of convincing simulation of something or someone, then it really is, it's one of those things where we can't really put a sort of we can't really put a finger why we think it's creepy. We just instinctively know that that's wrong in sort of an uncanny valley way. Like I've heard, for example, like 4chan green text where like people will be like, I'm going to AI deepfake my high school love that I could never get a chance with, And so like, for example, I've talked many times about this one friend of mine where I sort of, me and her, like I sort of had a thing for her since we were kids, but never worked out. It's like one of those things. It's like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna deep fake her now. Is that going to satiate my desire? Like, it's not. It's you can say that it's pathetic, and of course it's pathetic. Of course it's terrible. But if you were to sort of suspend those immediate moral impulses for a second and analyze on a deeper level why this is potentially destructive, then it really goes to the question of human worth itself, right? I mean, this is why sexual politics are so hotly contested nowadays, because it's something about the self in general. It's something about subjectivity. So when you are predicating through artificial technology, you're essentially recreating that desire in a more vivid form. Then it's one of those things where who's the real one who's suffering here, right? Of course, it's a suffering on a level for like an e-girl or your high school sweetheart or whatever to be exploited in such a way with her image, right? But also, it points to a form of inner longing that people have in the collapse in the wake of like the sort of the destruction of normal human relations between men and women, and that I think is a deeper issue.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, and I think that there's there's something disturbing about the meshing of these two technologies, right?
Yeah.
Of both having the ability to mimic someone's voice, combine
Yeah.
that with a chat bot and someone's physical form,
Have you
right?
seen some of them? Have you seen the Trump Epstein Island one? The
No, no,
AI
I haven't.
voice? Oh, it's hilarious. It's terrible, but it's hilarious. It's hilarious. Yeah, I knew that was you, Dino. I knew it was you. You have the same profile picture. So yeah, my friend Dino, she sent you a super chat. She will be on Content Minded soon. So anyways, sorry, go ahead, Jay. Go ahead. I cut you off.
No, but there is this, and again, because I do think there's something to the idea that like merely nudity or sexual content is not in many in many ways like the most desirable thing. That market has kind of been flooded, just sheer access to nudity.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is a chance of this kind of like simulacra of a sexual relationship, obviously kind of a debased version of the real thing. But I think that we are already
We're already
seeing
there.
many people who essentially have already determined to opt out. The imitation is good enough. It's good
Right.
enough. You shouldn't bother. And so to me, I guess past, I don't know what we do about it, but to me, this seems really, really bad. If we are on the right trying to essentially undo civilizational entropy, this is kind of like another nail in the coffin, so to speak.
Yeah.
And not in like Sodom and Gomorrah, like people do something bad, therefore society,
No, it will
millions must
accelerate
try.
what's already there. Really.
Yes, which is this like radical deracination, this radical like atomization, where people are essentially in position where all of their needs can be met by the Skinner box.
Yeah. No, but that's true. What, are you going to say something else, Jay?
No, not at all. I was finished. Sorry, it sounded like you had something to say.
No, you go ahead, my friend. Go. I've been talking way too much. I've been interrupting.
No, not. So my point is just that on one hand, it's like, well, all of these trends have existed before, right? And
right.
On one hand, like I do have a religious objection to pornography, and I while I maintain that is not my argument here. My argument here is that essentially there is something about the process of sex, both physically and as just kind of like a social phenomena, that brings people together by necessity.
Yes.
And even in an era where sexual standards were not good, shall we say, kind of like the right before the internet, people still had to come together to do that.
Yeah.
And so now we're stuck in a kind of a perverse system where we have more degeneracy and more atomization all at once. Whereas before, those two things were not entirely, negatively correlated, right? Like you had to find someone to have sex with, which may not have been the best social bond, but it was better than nothing.
Right.
And I don't know, to me, it's like, great. Now we have the worst of both worlds. Everyone
we have total alienation, but we also have
total
sexual
alienation. Yeah, the divorce the divorce of all from all. To kind of paraphrase
God
Carlyle.
could never see this coming either. Like that's how bad it is. Oh, go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
No, I'm done. That was my last thought, at least for the moment.
Oh yeah, no, it's true. I feel, but I mean, for those who don't know, what you mean is that sex, in a way, is okay. When I say it's a public ritual, I don't mean like the creepy, like orgiastic way. I mean like take your head out of the gutter for a minute. Even though I did mention Renew Fault and Natty Muncher, I'm sorry, but to keep it more highbrow, meaning that the facilitation of sexuality and intimacy and relationships happens on a social level, and that you have to actually have a network and go out there and have a community. And back in the day, this was all largely predicated on your own social circle, your culture, your religion, your race, you name it, right? So like that's what we mean by even the facilitation of sex has a social element to it, obviously, right? That's what we mean. I'm assuming that's what you mean, Jay. So
no, it is. And again, to me, like if you could describe, what are the things that, unite us and our friends, because it really is a very like ununited kind of like disparate group of people.
Yeah.
Well, it's this idea that whatever the regime is, they're evil. You know, that society is sick, and society isn't just sick in a
We're
material way.
against the current thing. Yeah.
Well, yes, but it's
Yeah.
not just, you know, pure reaction. That's part of it. That's not good. But nonetheless, right? There is this part of it that's like the bonds that have traditionally put people together are fraying. You know, that these kind of like necessary social ties that make us human. And this goes back to Aristotle,
Yeah.
right? The idea that, you know, a man outside of society is either, you know, a god or a beast.
Yes, and Nietzsche said that there are men that are both gods and beasts. Like he said that of Napoleon. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Jay. So I think he got that from Aristotle. So
Well, yes, because he was very much in conversation with the Greeks, right? And
right. Yeah. Well, he was a philologist at first. Yeah. Yeah.
and to me at least, I think that the problem is, and this is a very basic critique of liberalism that is, you know, kind of common in these circles, is that freedom wasn't good for us.
Right.
You know, this idea that if we could just liberate ourselves from social bonds, if we could just liberate ourselves from material want, and don't get me wrong, I benefit from quite a lot of that, but that wasn't a free trade. You know, there was a debt to be paid with that. And I think that what we're getting now is that we've essentially followed this line of, you know, eternal liberation, you know, to the point where now it is quite literally, you know, eroticism liberated from another party, you know, where you can
it's
just
eroticism liberated from itself. Even there is no eroticism.
Exactly. Yeah. There's almost no like common reference. And it is, again, like, it's left me in the point where I'm saying, yeah, we must return to prostitutes, you know, return to tradition.
I hate to say, I was in the tip of my tongue, pun intended, right? But no, I was gonna say like prostitution in some ways is way more ethical than this like man-made horror crap. But yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Right. Again, and I don't know, maybe I'm walking myself
I was
in
working out
circles.
before this. I did an hour on the ride and row, so my whole body is singing right now. So go ahead, Jay. What you can say?
No, and one, congratulations. You know, you keep doing it. You know, you're headed the right direction. But I don't know. To me, at least, it is a very disturbing trend, because I think that in a weird way, EC, not more ethical, but more real. That's a good way to describe it. Because in a weird way, the real is our territory, right? And the left is at home. You know, this force of entropy kind of wins on the internet as we're kind of like more and more disconnected from reality. And again, I think it just speaks to kind of like the truly, you know, grim state of things, because before you could always at least count on material conditions as a limit to human wants.
Right.
You know, like in the example of Gorgias, right? Like he decided to optimize his you know, his ability to satisfy his own wants. You know, and of course Plato's or Socrates' response was, well, you know, cover yourself in sores and pay someone to scratch you, right? Like, and essentially the idea being like, well, that is you having your needs met. The problem is that is limited both by your surface area for sores and how many slaves you can pay to scratch you. You know,
yeah,
but
there's
now
hard material limits. Yeah,
but you know, when you have essentially, you know, like an AI who, you know, and I'll end this tortured, you know, metaphor here, who can, you know, kind of like transcend those bonds. To me, it's the same thing as like the Christian idea that death is sort of a mercy on us.
Yeah,
you know, because it puts a hard cap on the levels of depravity we can sink to. And again, this to me is like it's a true,
it's a very
like,
maudlin interpretation of it, but yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one I've heard, but to me, it's like, oh dear, what have we done? What have we wrought?
No, it's true. Yeah, I see a lot of fervor in the chat. I see Yiz saying, "Bring back divine prostitution, have a based Christian monarchy regulated." Well, that's true. I mean, I know Aquinas said something. Of course, Charlemagne right-wing bordellos. But now that I'll give you a good example of what happened in terms of e-girl and this sort of thanatopolitics that we're seeing. This is a very long-winded theory cell point. I've never said this before, Jay, so you're going to get another Jay Burden stream exclusive. But now, so are you happy about this?
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're not going to be happy for very long. But anyway, no, I'm kidding. No, it's a
I
fire
expect
take.
nothing less.
It's a fire take because I see my good friend King Salmonfish in the chat. Okay, so King Salmonfish, if you followed his schizo posting, he's talking about this Haley Lejeune girl, who, as we know, was the tank girl on TikTok that got invited to Mar-a-Lago. Who's the Trump Jr., Eric Trump Jr. So not Eric Trump, yeah, Eric Trump, not John Jr., Eric Trump. So I had this tweet that basically one of these like irony leftists screen capped. It was in reply to my good friend Cold Healing. Cold Healing is a very interesting Twitter account because he's one of us, like he's a frog, right? But he has a huge normie audience because he basically posts these like, clickbaity, lurid, like man versus woman, girl boss TikToks. You've seen these, right? You've seen these.
Right.
So,
yeah, I have.
Yeah. So I was writing this article. I was going to write it. It was called, something like, glow in the dark e-girls. I might still write it. I had this take because she had this TikTok where she's on an Abrams tank and she's got her like military gear on. And of course it's recruiting. It's an elaborate PSYOP recruiting video. And I believe she's like the daughter of some like, military person. So yeah, and apparently King Salmonfish, our good friend, is trying to PSYOP her into saving the world. But anyways, so Haley, she had this TikTok where she's on the tank, but she's saying these like very like sort of ethereal girl, almost like chic nihilist type of tone of voice, where she's like, nobody will care about me when I die. All the men that made fun of me, I'm gonna get my revenge. To live is to die. Like she had all these things that were very like pop nihilist like philosophy that only an e-girl could find fascinating, right? So let me actually look this up. So I had it, I wrote it down in my Google Docs. Let me look it up. She wrote that, where's the article? It was called Glow in the Dark E-Girls. Man, where is it? But anyway, so my point being is that I had this tweet where I talk about this. I'm like, basically, she's the ultimate, like, the sort of like ultimate, how should you say, the ultimate marriage of this sort of, Thanatos and Eros, right? Because she's basically recruiting you to die in the military-industrial complex. But at the same time, she's also like giving this very like ethereal girl type of like, like pay attention to me. I'm an e-girl. I'm going to fulfill your desires. I'm a cute mid. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so in a way, it's this marriage of like Eros and Thanatos in one by saying that like, essentially like this e-girl is recruiting you to die for whatever adjective you want to call it, the GAE or another word or whatever, the military industrial complex, right? So
well, it's interesting because that is weirdly a profoundly like liberal mix, right? Is that there's this obsession and revulsion with both death and sex.
Yeah.
Right? There's obsession with like the slasher film, with true crime. But also like if you get into a fight in school, we'll throw you out.
Right.
Where there's this like on one hand like weird obsession and total revulsion. And in a weird way you see the same thing with sexuality. Right, where there's this obviously societal obsession with sex. We were both saying like, good Lord, can the E-right go 5 minutes without discussing sex?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there is a desire to be, much like there is with death, to be separated from the real genuine object, so to speak. So like sex without children, women without aging, all of these things where it's like we are both drawn in and repulsed by the thing itself. But carry on, man. I want to hear what you're saying.
No, so my point was being that essentially what happened was this like irony leftist that has some kind of like Cumtown ripoff podcast, which I believe we interviewed him once on Follow the Rules. He like screen capped. He's like this guy's thirsty, and it's like totally missing the point. It wasn't that I was thirsting over Haley Lejeune. I'm just saying that there's this weird mix of like TikTok girls recruiting you to fight and die in the next war. And it's just like I felt like I'm trying desperately to find what she actually said here, but she said like these like pseudo profound statements. The point being is that I feel like we're entering that sort of that sort of, how should I say it? It's a nihilitative space where your desires can be extended and replicated to you in like, semi in the real world, although it's virtual, that the virtual world can deliver you your desires to the point of like utter debasement and cheapening of it, to the point where it means nothing anymore. It means nothing that you fantasize about that woman in high school or wherever that you can never get. Like the sort of romance of it, the sort of like pent up aggression, or the sort of beauty that comes out of like having a muse that you can't really physically attain, but yet it remains an ideal within you. You know what I mean? Like that is gone now. That is done for. Like all of that, like now that you can like replicate your own like perfect fantasy woman in your head, like what does this say about just the ability of like the human spirit to like, you know what I mean? Like there will be no more Dante's Beatrice. There will be no more Muse. There'll be nothing of that sort because you could just replicate it. And it's really like, I can't put words to describe like how this will further distort relations between men and women. Like having, and fully like, full disclosure, having, being someone that doesn't exactly have like the best track record with relationships or women. By that I mean no track record at all. Oh, here it goes. I finally found it. It was in my documents. So here's what she said. I quoted her verbatim in this article. She says, all men who are cruel or evil to me is going to die soon. Every time I meditate, God loves me a little more. No one from my school remembers me. Feminism is working. I will die in a very chill way. And of course, she throws up the mudras, right? The Zen Lotus position, and she's on top of a tank, and she's meditating in the Zen Lotus position. How is this not a profound statement on this marriage of Thanatos and Eros on a cosmic level? But of course, Haley Lejeune is psyoping young incels into fighting. I don't know. They're going to fight and die in the blue yellow country. Maybe, who knows? Like it's really destructive. But I know why King Salmon Fish. I see that he went too far in the chat. So very sorry.
He was just spamming the chat again. It was funny, but it was a little bit too much.
No, but yeah, that comes with the terror. That's I don't blame him. Like please.
Oh yeah, no hard feelings.
Let him cook. Let him cook. But he's got a very crazy theory about Haley Lejeune. But no. But the point being is that where am I going with this long rant? I just wanted another way to say that the ironists, they can piss off, and I didn't mean it that way. I wasn't thirsty. But anyways, my point is the reason I bring up this example is because we still have the same very nefarious glow in the dark level, like DARPA level technology interfacing with human desire. You know what I mean? So it's very weird. Like the fact that you can produce deep fakes of everybody, essentially. This is essentially compromise on everybody. This is the dream of the sort of social theorists that were, listen, I don't want to give any credence to certain people like, Logo Dallas or whatever, but this is essentially the dream of a lot of these like Rand Corporation think tank intellectuals, that essentially the whole society, they were studying Eastern Germany at the time, and they were envisioning a whole society of compromise, right? Like it's like this movie that came out recently where like everyone in their town was this like little town, all their search history and all of their information was leaked that you could like access publicly. I don't know. I forget what the movie title was, but imagine if we lived in that world of complete transparency. What would happen if everyone has deepfake porn, if everyone has compromise, if everyone has their, voice, AI saying N-words or whatever, what would happen? We would have no other choice but to have total universal amnesty, because society would literally be destroyed unless
it truly is the desert of the real, right?
Exactly,
like nothing is real anymore unless you've seen it. And
It
that
would
was
be
already
it would
kind
be an
of true on
incredibly
the
Christian
internet.
act because it would be mass forgiveness in some ways, but maybe
Yeah.
not. Man, I'm expecting too much of people. Sorry, Jay. I'm just ranting right now. You go ahead. I'm very
So to me,
Yeah.
it reminds me of kind of like the mythological symbol of the fairy feast, right?
yeah,
Which is this idea, right, that you go out to kind of like the other world, right? Like you pass through the portal. You know, you eat at this feast. You know, you drink the most wonderful food, the most wonderful wine. And when you finally fall asleep at the end, you know, you wake back up. And in that intervening time, you know, 100 years has passed. You're an old man, and it's
Yeah.
all turned to sawdust in your mouth.
Whoa.
And to me, that's what this is. You know, it truly is more just
Right.
pure neuron activation than reality can offer you. You know, and I've said this before about clout, right? About, you know, just pure parasocial interaction. That if
Right.
that's what you're looking for, you're in the wrong sphere. Like go become a, you know, a gaming streamer. Go become a, you know, a
Go
left
become a
reaction channel.
Twitch leftist. There you go. You have
Right.
out of
You'll
100
win.
clout.
That's the way to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I think that, you know, as we've said before, you know, the internet isn't ours. You know, the
No.
unreality leads towards entropy.
That's a
And I
profound
think that
thought, actually. The internet's not ours. That's a very
I
because
stole that from the
we
distributed.
think.
So
Oh no, but the distributist, he's right though. But the thing is though, is that I feel like distributist, like maybe we should talk to him one day about this because the history of the internet facilitates this illusion that it is ours, but really it's not when you look at the history of it. But yet the anon, the poster, we want to reclaim it, because in a sense it's spiritually ours, but materially is not ours. That's an illusion. There are higher forces than us that basically govern the very sinews and synapses, digital, ethereal, technological synapses of the internet itself that are beyond our control. But sorry, go ahead, Jay. It's a very profound thought, actually.
well, it was sort of like we were squatting in someone else's house.
Yeah,
You know,
we're
the
always
deep
we're
state.
the nomads. We're the Homo sacer. Sorry, I know it's like total pop theory selling from Geo right here. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well,
Damn.
we were kind of able to wrest the controls away because no one else was there. You know, no one
Yeah.
was watching, quote unquote, the internet in the pre-Trump era. You know, so you could say whatever you want. You could build up mean magic. But once the Eye of Sauron saw it,
Give guides to cooking crack on YouTube.
yeah, well, exactly. But once that became a recognized like source of power, even a very weak of one,
Yeah.
it was just gone. You know, and the idea that, well, we can make 2016 too. You know, we can recreate the meme magic. We can win on the internet, and that will result in real life. Like that's just been
We don't live in
proven
that time
materially
anymore.
false, right? And to
Yeah.
me, I
We
guess
fell from heaven, Jay. We fell from heaven. Sorry. Yeah. So we fell from the garden. Okay, we had the garden. It was over. Okay, Trump ruined it. I hate to say it, he ruined it, but no, he didn't really. But sorry, go ahead, Jay.
No, so to kind of wrap this up, and again, I've told you before we went live that this is my third stream in a row of this evening, and so my
Yeah.
voice is gone, and I'm gonna have to, you know, tap out relatively early. But it is that,
You can just let
you
me
know,
talk for half an hour.
yeah, why not? You know, actually, sure enough. Well, you keep cooking then. But reality is ours. You know, it's why I always say, like, keep your head up. The lie can't last forever, and it's because, like, when we interface with reality, we win. You know,
Right.
but just kind of like these eternal lies. You know, these eternal kind of like ephemeral replacements for real things. Like those aren't ours. You know, and they might not literally be demonic, like the schizoid say. You know, there might not
Yeah.
literally be a demon in your computer, but like treat it like it is. You know, because this stuff is like, and I know it's going to be hard to stay away from, but like to me, it's just pure danger, at least from my perspective.
Yeah. Well, there is a sort of danger, like there. It's funny the way you say that it's a danger, but what is a danger? It's an aesthetic danger, and for the first time, not the first time, because we know that there's been works of art that have caused regime changes, riots, overturning of civilizational norms. But when you think of that term, right? Because, for example, Walter Benjamin has that term, the dialectical image, which is a complicated theory to describe, but essentially the image intersecting with all these different social forces, right? But when you talk about aesthetic danger, especially when it comes to the sort of sexual relations between us, like, I understand, like, this is what I will say. Like, again, I've been bashing feminism, even though I'm deeply sort of like sympathetic to the concerns of women that talk about how their own like agency is violated. Because imagine if you did live in a world where you are primarily the object of like sexual desire, and yet every man that you see is potentially making a deep fake porn of yourself, doing like horrendous acts that you would never like in real life consent to, right? It's sort of, yeah, I understand that's a very like evil and destructive thing, because it does force us to re-examine our relations of like the relation between like men and women and human worth and so forth. But also I think like there's an inner subjugation to being enslaved by your own desires, to the point where you no longer view like normal human beings where you could have a potential for a relationship, but rather because you have this like pornographic image where you can have the ability to replicate a human being into the form of like a sex object, either through like some weirdo AI, interfacing with neural net, interfacing with like human sex bots, whatever you can, like whatever sci-fi Blade Runner like future you can envision, which will happen because like the desire of the coomer is endless. And the technology that can facilitate cooming is also endless because of the monetary incentive to do so. So you will have a world where you can deep fake your perfect woman, your perfect waifu for laifu, and you could literally like put them into a sex bot, into an interface, custom order. That I can easily envision that happening, right? I mean, it will be looked down upon, obviously, but there's no real mechanism to say, okay, is this enough? Because we know that pornography is massively available. We know that women are basically every young woman is, or even older women now, are encouraged to do it, right? So it's like, what's wrong with it? Oh, because it's not your consent. I get it, right? But is consent really the only mechanism of human worth? Like that's the problem when you unleash these forces.
Well, and it's why
Yeah,
consent based morality is so empty.
yeah.
Because while it is certainly
It's an easy metric for most people in hookup
it,
culture and so forth.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's an easy metric, but again, this is downstream of a social bond broken, right? Where
right.
essentially, the traditional bounded like rules for sex are obviously, pretty well known.
Yeah,
There's traditional Western values, and those were broken, and the state had to essentially step in to mitigate the damage, quote unquote. And this
right.
is the power increase, right? And so, right, well, how does the state, determine? How does the state judge? Because the state has already broken the previous order. And so what does it do? Well, something that is easy to categorize, something that is, some easy to write into law. And while it might make good legal sense, I don't say good as in I approve of it, but convenient for bureaucrats.
Yeah.
It is again a fundamental oversimplification.
No, exactly, 100%. And I think that it's an oversimplification, but also we know that um, it's not like in the best of times, it's not very easy to like put a legalism on top of these questions of like human dignity and human worth and sexual value. Like, obviously, I mean, this is like even addressing the incel question is such a painful topic because you're essentially saying that there is no like quick government intervention solution, even though like global terminal end of history liberalism is predicated on the assumption that the managerial state can essentially mediate any sort of human interaction that is residually problematic based on like older norms and values. So it's very much like a catch 33 or catch 22 at this point. Sorry, that was a Meshuggah reference, catch 33. Um, like, come on, King Sam. If it's Haley Lejeune did not send you a sex tape, come on, bro. I don't know about that. It would be crazy if that happened, though. But anyways, Haley Lejeune.
So
No,
I
let's
will
go to the
not
Justin
go into
Murphy.
this. I will
Yeah,
not go into this. I will address this, but I refuse to have this conversation.
about
Uh,
Haley Lejeune.
no, no, no. I refuse to have that conversation too, but for much different reasons. Someone in chat brings up the question as to whether AI generated realistic CP is actually CP, which
Oh,
that's a hell of a
the
conversation. That for the sake of
Ayala,
my YouTube, I'm
yeah,
not touching that. I'm not
yeah,
touching
I
that with a
ain't touching
10-foot
that
pole.
one.
I see the concern, but for obvious reasons, I'm not going anywhere near that.
Well,
But
let me
anyway,
just say that they will always escalate. That's the problem. It's never going to
yes,
be.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go. By definition, they'll always escalate. So
All
you're
right.
basically just facilitating. Anyways, yeah. So sorry, but that
So
was
this
the
is
Ayala
from
poll. Remember the Ayala poll about that?
no, I have her muted, and it's wonderful. I never see
Good.
anything she posts. It's actually what I do with
Have
every
you
single.
muted the words Ayala?
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
my
This
God.
is how you make Twitter great. You block
She
every ego.
blocked me. I can't believe it.
Oh, I
'Cause
wonder why.
Well, no, because I blocked her first, but maybe she saw I was talking mad smack, so then she blocked me. Yeah, Ayala girl.
All right, so this is from Justin
She
Murphy,
really is a
right?
demon that shouldn't be fed. Like, it's like the old Simpsons back when Simpsons was good. Like, just don't look, just don't look. Like, it's true, just don't look. Don't talk about Ayala. I know I'm violating my own like thing now. Like, here's the thing. Why is she even that important? Like, because she's smart. She's a rationalist. She fulfills the nerd fantasy. What is her intellectual output? Being a cam girl, OnlyFans. I'm sorry. Her intellectual output was writing a guide about how to be a cam girl. Yeah, very good intellectual output. Congratulations, rationalist community. Congratulations, Big Yud. You really did a good job with that. Thank you, Big Yud. Thank you, Less Wrong. Thank you, Slate Star Codex, Alexander, you gutless coward. Sorry, listen, I hate all these people for different reasons, but Ayla is one of them. So sorry,
All right,
Jay.
so
Yeah.
this is from Justin Murphy, who again is not normally a source of good takes. Do you have any interaction with Justin Murphy at all?
Oh yeah, he's a good friend of mine. I was one of the first people on his podcast. Yeah.
Oh,
Way
I'm
back.
sorry. Then I didn't mean to. Oh, this is not the guy I thought. Never mind.
Who did you think of? No, Justin Murphy has a lot of terrible takes a lot of times, but he does it purposefully. Yeah.
For some reason, I thought he looks very similar to an artifact. I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh, I was thinking of Chris Ray Gun. I'm sorry. I'm mentally.
Oh
deficient.
no, yeah, no, but
sorry.
Justin Murphy's lambasted for his his
Okay.
bait takes. Yeah.
So Justin Murphy, right, who is not in fact Chris Ray Gun.
Oh.
If you have voluntarily uploaded to the public sphere enough audiovisual data that someone can generate fake AI porn of you, then you are at fault. You sold your body and voice for power. Now power will do what it wants with you.
You know what's funny about that is that I guarantee you he's probably read it as well. It reminds me of the essay by Humdog called Pandora's Vox that me and Prude covered. We were originally inspired by Default Friend. It reminds me of Humdog's essay because she actually says that the more you post on the internet, the more that your being, your essence, your thoughts are being commodified. But of course, she was talking about like Usenet boards and like chat rooms back in the day. But it's the same. It's worse nowadays. Like your data is being like right now, we are consenting to have the data of our human, whatever you want to call it, our human essence projected onto a web interface on YouTube. Right, just by virtue of the fact that it can give us recognition, it can put our ideas out there, it can potentially give us money. By the way, I'll show at the end. No, but you know what I mean. Like that relationship goes unheard, it goes untalked about because of the sort of silent agreement that we do have with tech platforms. That if you let us on, basically our thoughts, our ideas, our words, our images are theirs, and we pay that price. Now, I don't agree with Justin Murphy. I know why he's saying that. You know why Justin Murphy is a very effective poster. Why he enrages so many different people. Like when his tweets like go off to the moon. It's because he has an ability to say something that you can't really argue out of the logic of. But deep down it's like from the wrong perspective. So for example, when he had that tweet about I shouldn't even say it for YouTube. It was like, if you can think that like 13-year-olds can transition, it was about something like that. Then why do you think that? Never mind. I'm not going to say it. It was a terrible thing, but it basically lit the internet on fire. But anyways, the point being is that Justin Murphy, he is correct in the sense. But he's wrong, of course, in the application. I don't think that people can like ethically, I hate that word ethic. let's get rid of that word. It's a terrible word. Terrible ghouls, like Steven Pinker used this word. No, let's call it morals. Okay, it is immoral to take someone's image without their consent, without their knowing, and create lurid pornographic displays of themselves, right? But that being said, it's very hard to argue out of that post to say that yes, you do consent to putting your image, your voice, and your ideas out in the open to these tech companies. So it's very, I don't know. What do you think of it, Jay? I mean, I know your brain's probably frying after three
No,
consecutive.
well, a little bit. I mean, I
yeah.
think it's always a little bit fried, but there is something about the fact that, again, there's no, just because we weren't paying for these doesn't mean that there was no cost.
Right.
And the cost has always been that you were commodified, but you were commodified in an abstract sense, right? You were commodified as market data, to be sold for any number of reasons. But now you're both commodified as, the market data, your location, all that still exists, but also your likeness, your face, your voice, what kind of makes you you. And like Luthemplar said, all it takes is 2 minutes of video, and now you're an AI. Now there's an AI voice of you. And again, like, they're not great, on the consumer level, but like, they will be soon. And the idea that, much like the terms of service that none of us read, we just kind of click yes on, that in a weird way we have kind of, and maybe I'm, like I said, I'm tired, so my brain is going odd places, but it very much reminds me of The Little Mermaid, right? Where you sign away the contract and Ursula steals your voice. And in a weird way, right? Like, the flesh is becoming word, like, in a weird, like, inversion again.
The
And
flesh
to me,
becomes weird.
This is just all incredibly, I don't know. It
is biblical in a way.
Yeah, it is. And it takes a lot. I've been on the internet for a while. It takes a lot to get me to kind of that, like, revulsion level, just instant disgust. Like, no, make this go away. But that's kind of my reaction to this. Like, this just seems very, very wrong. And I know there's no way to put it back in the bottle.
Yeah, it is. There's no way to really put it back in the bottle because you're dealing with monumental forces of human incentives and desires that can't easily be taken away. Because it's sort of similar to, okay, what are you gonna do? You're gonna just ban pornography? And a lot of people, like, let's face it, okay, like, listen, as much as I agree that we should ban, like, a lot of pornography, we have to realize that in some ways it is kind of impossible. And a lot of, like, the fantasy that a lot of us, like, online right wingers have, like, if we lived in based world, yeah, we can make that argument. But the human incentive to, like, for pornography is so ubiquitous to this at this point. Like, the scary part is, like, how do you prevent young people from accessing it? Like, how do you, that isn't a very easy solution because it's not simply like a parent, like, puts a parental control on their computer. It's like they're going to access it on their phones. It's like, it's harder because you have to, like, educate your children to say, like, okay, what does it say about you as a person? What does it say about your time? What does it say about your relation to, like, normal, healthy human interaction? Like, that's
there's also
infinitely,
a secondary,
like, harder.
Oh, sorry, you go.
No, I was gonna say, like, really quickly, it's just infinitely harder than, like, just banning something. Because banning something, like, yeah, okay, we should ban something, but it's very, like, something like pornography is not like hard drugs, or it's not even like guns or whatever. Like, I mean, we shouldn't ban guns, obviously. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's very difficult because of the fact that we have multiple generations that have been taught that, like, this is good and normal and, like, everybody does it and who cares. Like, it's not even like smoking. It has no social stigma whatsoever. And if you're a smoker, you have way more social stigma attached to you than if you watch porn. Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, sorry,
No,
go
definitely.
ahead.
There's also some aspect of this, which is the rise of, quote unquote, like, AI ethics. As I think that there was this idea that, kind of downstream from, like, the idea of, like, civilizational progress, that things like science, things like computers, things like AI are neutral. They are arbiters of truth.
Yeah.
What we've seen with ChatGPT is that no, that a thumb will be put on the scale. The eternal, HR lady will find you everywhere. And
Yeah.
much like we've had a conversation about kind of like the programming that goes into kind of like real human pornography, right? With things like sissy hypno and the like. I can only imagine, what will result from these same kind of like, thumbs being put on kind of like the AI output scale, so to speak.
Well, yeah, it's like what's funny though is that these issues are not they're more older than you think. For example, there was always these issues of like sexual deviancy in Second Life, for instance, where you could like facilitate a sexual interaction with someone that doesn't consent to it through their avatar. Or like, for example, they explicitly ban in the TOS any sort of like cheese pizza play, not to use the real word, right? So these issues are much older than we think, even though it's like, but that raises a question though of like, and I know this sounds really silly, it sounds really ridiculous, I know, but I'm just saying like, theoretically, if you express your identity and your agency through an internet avatar, and then like that avatar is subject to a lot of like very like deviant sexual exploitation against your will, then it's like, of course, it's not the same as like physical, actual sexual exploitation. But there is something to be said that if you're putting your conscious energy into something, and that something is being transgressed against. I mean, of course, in the internet, you should have like a bit of a harder armor, obviously, because I don't think that like just because you're a troll or you're insulting someone means that you should be banned or whatever. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like when you're like basically LARPing this existence through an avatar, like on Second Life, or in this case, through AI internet pornography, then it really does, it does say something about, it's something more than just the older like ethos of the internet, which I do think should be preserved. I don't agree with like Peterson. I think like the troll demons serve a purpose and they should be protected. Well, not always, but you know what I mean. Like what he thinks are troll demons are like, people saying like calling him out on being like ridiculous, right? But I'm saying like there is something to be said about when you do conflate those lines between your avatar on the internet on an MMO and your own real existence. Like for example, like I mentioned Humdog, she was one of them on Second Life. She basically lived her existence through Second Life. Now you could say that this is terrible, this is wrong, and it is terrible, but there is something to be said about the earlier sort of utopian visions of the internet, which so eternally fascinates us millennials, that basically your existence on the internet can be in a way an extension of yourself. And that brings up a number of like different moral and whatever ethical issues. And it's very fascinating. But I do think that in the internet, in some ways, because of the nature of like anonymity and because of the nature of online interaction, you do have to, in some ways, take your presence seriously because it's still a form of like your conscious self being projected somewhere. It's still a form of your energy. Like all these people that like pretend to be like totally ironically detached and have a million different avatars and accounts and like go like basically they just love they view it as a video game, just like go and like troll people. Like there's still like a conscious intention there. There's still something to be said about your being that is being projected onto the digital mainframe. And it is quite interesting when you look at human life as not being totally detached by the medium in which you are expressing yourself, but rather that medium is swallowing whole what your essence is or whatever your hypostasized existence is, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, and we're all sort of like in this mega structure that isn't exactly our own. We don't own, we're on native, we're sort of on like alien territory all the time, but yet we still carve out these like fugitive spaces of existence. And now when you talk about other people transgressing that boundary, this brings up very complicated issues because we don't exactly have the sort of cut and dry moral legal issue of actual physical sexual exploitation. So it's like it's very complicated to say the least. I know I'm just like trying to like nuance, bro, and I know that it's not very effective to say like, oh, there's no answer to it, because I know that like doesn't make for like an easy like selling point for a podcast. But I do think it's true. There is
a complicated problem.
Yeah. But
so Gio, I'll be honest. I am flagging fast. So do you want to hit super chats and then wrap this up?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
So Luthemplar for $5 said, I apologize for stealing both of your voices and trapping them in a silicon limbo from which they can never escape. Gio, did you hear the one where he made your voice plead for mercy as it was sucked into a machine?
Yeah,
that was quite disturbing.
Great. I love that one. That
and
was
then
pretty cool.
Hebor33 said, Renault unfollowed me. M wholesome Dino.
Oh, that's my good friend Dino World. She's gonna be on Content Minded soon.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I'll give her a follow.
Yeah, she's really great. Dino World. Yeah, her ad is eGoyle on Twitter. Let me look it up. I'll give you the exact ad on Twitter. But no, it's funny that voice actually, for some reason, my voice isn't very easy to replicate on AI because there's some parts that do sound like me, but it doesn't sound like me. It's like
I know what you mean. Like my voice comes out much deeper on the AI, which I mean is personally flattering. But yours, you kind of are robbed of your energy, so to speak.
Yeah. So her at is eGoyle, so EGOYLE 4U, number 4U on Twitter. So go and give my friend Dino World a follow. She's great. She's amazing. I love her, and she's a good friend of mine, good friend of the show. So yeah. Go follow
Douglas Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsnail Dimmadome, for $2 says, I live in a giant bucket, which I
can see.
I mean, good, I guess. It seems
he lives
like
in a giant crab bucket. He can't establish a hierarchy. He lives in Kowloon Walled City.
So where can people find you if they want to listen to more of your work?
Yeah, sure. My channel, GiantArtProductions. Everyone knows me on Twitter, @GiantGeo. I should change my handle to GiantArtProductions as well, but it's Geo's Content Corner, obviously. And patreon.com/GiantArtProductions. Go to Telegram with my longer, spicier rants @GiantArtProductions. And also, everything is also now available on Substack, but I offer the free version of each podcast, Content Minded, and the paid version on Substack every Wednesday. This Wednesday, I didn't have an episode because I was double booked. And tomorrow, Digital Archipelago is going to be on my channel. It's going to be another article week. So we're going to break down some articles on that new statue. We have an old Paul Town article. We also have this other article that I think we're going to go over the Alexander Adams, the art scene, how to create a dissonant art scene article a little bit. But of course, my good friend Matthew the Stout and Fen de Villiers had a whopping 3-hour video on that article that I highly recommend. So if you type in Matthew the Stout on Twitter, and you'll find it. But anyways, yeah, so that's where you can find me tomorrow. Digital Archipelago, 2:15 p.m. It's on my channel. It's always on. Like this week's my channel. Next week it's Prude's channel. That's the way we work it, and it's gonna be great. It's actually the title reference is a reference to a Jorge Luis de Borjas short story called The Zaire. It's a line from the short story Zaire. But all theories sell it, all words sell it. I'll explain what the title means tomorrow. So there you go. And of course, I think I'm going to upload something on the weekend. I upload my genre reviews. It's going to be the continuation of Necropolitics. I'm halfway through the Mbembe book in Necropolitics. And of course, after I review Necropolitics for genre reviews, one half I always give free. The other half I give to my patrons on patreon.com and also on Substack. The next book I will review is John David Ebert's Art After Metaphysics. So pay me. Be my good little pay pigs. You can't miss out on that. John David Ebert. And of course, but I have to get ready for this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. It's going to be forever. It's going to take me. After that, I'm thinking of doing a course where I review the Red Book by Carl Jung. But of course, that's going to be a long... Oh my God, that's terrible. It's going to take me forever. But yeah, so those are the genre reviews. Content Minded. Next week, I have a good Content Minded. I believe I'm going to release the Versaloon episode. So that's going to be good. Yeah, that's all my shilling. And you have another Thomas stream you're going to release, right?
Yeah, so yeah. That leads into I found a new way to monetize my content, right? Where before I would pre-record episodes and just sit on them for a week or so until the time came to release them. But now, if you want access to raw, unfiltered, uncut episodes of the Jay Burden Show before they go live, well, you can support me. I don't expect it, but I do appreciate it.
That's what I do.
And you can head over to Subscribestar, to my Substack, and any one of those will give you access to those soon to be released episodes ahead of time. Other than that, you can find me on YouTube, obviously, but also on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And recently, I've started pushing more stuff onto Odyssey. Odyssey is basically just YouTube, but better. It is very easy to use. It has all the functionality YouTube used to and no longer has, and you can say whatever you want there. So I've really been trying to push that as a new platform for our guys because I really like it, and it is it's a good refuge because obviously when you have conversations this big brain, this spicy, this transcendent, Susan has it out for you, so to speak. But anyway, Gio, thank you so much for coming out, man.
Yeah, man, this has been a great topic. Another Jay Burden show stream. It's been the third one now. So
yeah, definitely, man. And again, thank you for coming. Like I said, the timing and the scheduling on this was a little bit miffed and
a little insane. Yeah,
and that one was my fault. So again, thanks for bailing me out, dude.
Yeah, also Dino posted her in the chat for those of you who want to follow her. So there you go. Yeah, and also shout out to Renew Fault as well. I'm gonna have to talk to him after. I'm gonna say, why did you unfollow Dino World? I mean, she's a good friend. But maybe she's too wholesome for Renault. So there you go.
Well, anyway, guys, thanks so much for coming out, and remember, keep your head up. The lie can't last forever. Good night.
God bless.